Hi, so welcome to my kitchen. Like I promised, in this third and final step of your awakening medicine process, we're going to talk more about diet and nutrition and the importance of having an awareness of your accumulated degenerative nutritional stress. So in this part, we're talking about fat and cholesterol. And I always say in yoga, it's important to realize your block. That's the most important part. That's the most important aspect. It's to begin to, obviously, we're dropping into the body and we're beginning to have an awareness of where we personally are holding our stress and our tension. Now, as I promised, I haven't really spoken at length about the toxicity of nutritional stress. I'm just going to tell you this right now. Conventional medicine and doctors don't know anything about the requirements for a healthy organism. I'm not entirely sure how conventional medical establishment was actually established. But what I do know is that it was really only about 100 years ago. And what I find so incredible is that we have literally given our power away completely to a system of medicine that has no more than less than 100 years experience with the majority of the toxic chemicals that they are recommending for people to, prescribing for people to put into their bodies. And as far as I'm concerned, any manufactured chemical compound that has been created in a laboratory is 100% not efficient for the human anatomy, okay? And it will only cause more harm than good. Now, we very briefly touched on where do we get our stressors from, okay? And we've spoken at length now about habitual postural stress and tension, okay? And that in and of itself can create a block in the body because it started as a mental or emotional pain and then we locked it down in the body through a body posture, which is very much why when we're doing a yoga process, I recommend to people to start where they are, is to drop into how you're feeling and give it a body posture. So that could be crawling into a ball, it may be lying on your side, it may be lying on your front, it could be anything, okay? It could be bent over, you could have hand on the head. You know, generally, quite often when we're going into a yoga process, we're doing it as a result of recognizing a holding pattern in the physical body, in the physical form, okay? And a holding pattern, as we've already established, is stress, okay? And it's toxic on the physical form. So, you know, it never ceases to amaze me how little doctors and the medical establishment actually know about health and how to maintain a healthy organism. Now, what I've come to learn is that almost all disease is, as far as I can tell, essentially the same thing. It's just stagnation in the body caused in the very initial by a muscular block, which is then fed through a reactive stress patterns, generally of feed, where we begin to poison ourselves and we shut down, we lock down and we hold it, suppressing it into the body further and further and creating discomfort and ultimately dis-ease. Now, the way that we begin to create stress biochemically is as a result of these poisons and these toxins that are essentially inflammatory foods. They cause, they're acidic basically, and so they cause eruptions, erosion, corrosion inside the very soft and subtle fine linings of the tissue in the body, okay? And that goes down to every single cell. Now, what happens when we create corrosion in the body, okay? It's a little rip or tear, and of course that in and of itself is like friction, okay? And so we're going to create heat and inflammation. Now, what the body wants to do then, as a result of creating these little rips and tears all along the fine linings of the viscera, in particular in the gut, as that is the first place that our food choices are held. So that's in the stomach, the duodenum, the small intestine and the large intestine. And as the body begins to make these rips and tears along the length of the gut, little particles of undigested proteins, also known as feces, can leach out of these little holes in and around the gut. The feces is toxic to the internal workings of the body. That's why it's very much wrapped and held and just eliminated, because it is not a bodily requirement. It's just the sort of toxic fibre that's left that the body doesn't actually require, and so that's why it comes out as a process of elimination. And so what the body will do in order to actually save itself from the onslaught of these proteins that are raging around and rampantly creating havoc inside the workings of the body, is that it will lay down a band-aid in the form of fat, white fat, also known as cholesterol, okay? AKA. So cholesterol is actually your friend, and it's trying to create a more harmonious internal workings of the body. However, you don't know when to stop, because as a result of the culture that you were born into, you're an addict, addicted to many, many different substances, and even the act of eating in and of itself. The truth is, the human organism needs very, very little in order to thrive and survive. And I personally am coming to find that actually most food is pretty toxic on a healing system. And then by the time that you are healed, you're probably not going to need very much of it at all. Just a few simple natural bitters in the form of wild herbs and probably a little bit of protein. The medical establishment don't realise that the main culprit for laying down these fats is in fact sugars. So sugars like carbs, so that's bread, wheat, rice, any kind of white carbohydrate product, sugar in particular, refined sugars, and even fruit, tropical fruits, if you're not living in that country, are extremely, extremely acidic on the body. So they are what cause the rips and tears, and then the body lays down fat. However, if you've got a problem and you go to the doctors, quite often what they're going to tell you is stop eating fat. Here's the thing. Eat fat, get thin. And it's not even as obvious as that, because a lot of people, they're not needing to necessarily lose weight these days. They just want to detox. And fasting is the number one way we can burn fat, and we can begin to become an efficient fat burner, because fat is actually the efficient fuel that we need to burn in order to have a really authentic energy. But what we're doing is we're living in this quick fix oral gratification of sugars. And so we run from one sugar hit, crash, sugar hit, crash to another. So one of the quickest and easiest ways to heal that destructive, addictive pattern of cravings that you've gone into is to do a short fast, okay? And that could be anything from one day to a week or even longer if you know that you do have an extreme health condition that really needs attention. And a really great way to start every day as an efficient fat burner is to do what we call intermittent fasting. And intermittent fasting is where you stop eating at around 8 o'clock in the evening and then you fast for a good 16 hours of the actual day. So you then fast for most of the day, but you're actually sleeping. And then instead of getting up and having breakfast first thing in the morning, which is usually carbs, okay, and that's what throws us straight into the quick burn of the sugar energy, okay, and it kills the cell. It's too fast. It burns too fast and it burns out the cell. So then essentially that's when we're living with dead cells. So we don't want to start our day with carbs like toast, cereal, sugar, sweet, caffeinated drinks. Instead, what we want to do is we want to start to burn fat. So rather than eat anything first thing in the morning, the best thing to do is go for a walk or do some form of workout, whether it's going for a run, a walk, sticking on some music, having a little dance, anything like that. Even just getting up and going to work means that you're expending energy before you've actually put any energy in. Now, it's okay to have a cup of tea or a hot drink in the morning. I'll use something like cacao mixed with a barley cup, and it makes a really nice kind of sort of slightly mocha type of milky drink. You can sweeten that either with a sweet milk like hazelnut milk or something like agave syrup, coconut sugar, xylitol, erythritol. There are so many, stevia. There are so many different healthy, sweet alternatives these days. There really is no excuse for ever eating refined sugars anymore. So I don't want to hear it, okay? So we need to start the day by eating fat if we can. And I've got a great recipe for you, okay? This is such an addictive food, I can't tell you.